All right, boys, ready to rock with episode 229 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. And we are going to send it right to an interview now with former NHL goaltender, Calder Trophy winner in 03-04, and current studio analyst of the Boston Bruins with NESN. So let's go to the interview with Andrew Raycroft now on episode 229 of Boys in the Booth. The 2025 Brockville Winter Classic is coming up in just a few weeks, February 14th to 17th. BrockvilleWinterClassic.ca for more details. And returning to another Winter Classic event here in Brockville is a guy who was drafted in the 5th round of the 1998 NHL draft by the Boston Bruins and finds himself in elite company with the likes of Ken Dryden, Ed Belfour, Martin Brodeur, and others as one of the 16 goaltenders in NHL history to win the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie. He played a total of 12 seasons for the Bruins, the Maple Leafs, the Avalanche, the Canucks, and the Stars, and post-retirement has shifted to broadcasting, covering the Boston Bruins as a studio analyst for NESN. Please welcome to the show, Andrew Raycroft. Razor, thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Nothing to it.
Yeah, thanks again. And Razor, let's start with that Calder Trophy winning season for you in 03-04. Just take us through that magical year and what it means to you to be one of the last goaltenders ever to win that award to date. You and Steve Mason were the last ones to do so.
Yeah, hopefully Dustin Wolf gets a look this year and gets back in the mix, gets these goalies back in the mix. But no, it's a long time ago now. It's wild how time's flying by, but it was a lot of fun. It was just a great group of guys and everything. As you say, the stars aligned for me that season, and in my career, my preparation, some time in the minors, some time up in the NHL, and then finding my groove. So again, it was a while ago, but it's of course still special to us.
Yeah, absolutely. With Andrew Raycroft here on the show, you retired in 2014 and then decided to get into the broadcasting side of the business in 2018. How did you come to that decision? Was it something you always wanted to do? And just describe the experience you've had with it so far.
Well, yeah, it was actually the last thing I ever wanted to do. Never would have expected myself in this position today in 2012 in any way whatsoever. But I was back in Boston and had a young family and just kind of taking care of them and working a couple of real jobs or trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and just happened that there was an opportunity. There was a couple holes in the broadcasting area here that needed to be filled, and I got on the radar somehow and did it, and reluctantly did it, I would say, but realized that it was actually something that was challenging and enjoyable, and I started to enjoy it a little more every time I did it, and then came to the realization, on top of everything else, probably that all I really know is hockey. I had great motivation to live in the real world, but 9 to 5 wasn't my thing, and didn't really work my family's lifestyle, and that hockey was the best way, and broadcasting for me just was a perfect way to be back in the game, but still spend time at home.
Yeah, definitely, and you are very good at it, so it's been a great thing for you. And we're so excited to have you back for another Brockville Winter Classic event. Just how much are you looking forward to the weekend here in Brockville? And tell us what you are going to be doing on Saturday the 15th at the Memorial Center.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Brockville's obviously very close to my hometown of Belleville, so I get to double dip a little bit and see some family and friends in the area. But it's just great to be back in that part of the world for me, and to do it for great charity and a great fundraiser for the minor hockey program, and pay it forward just a little bit that way, on top of having fun and hanging out and playing some hockey outdoors. So really, it checks all of the boxes, and it's an absolute no-brainer for me to be a part of, and I'm excited about that. And then on Saturday night, it lines up real well with Four Nations.
Yeah.
The best on best will be playing in Montreal Saturday night, so going to be doing a little coach's corner type intermission entertainment. So we'll turn the TVs down and have a little Q&A with all the guys that are there, and hopefully get a couple good stories out of everyone, and have a good time while we watch the big game on Monday night or Saturday night. So I'll be doing the Four Nations color analyst down here in Boston. So it's also great prep for me to be ready to go on the doubleheader Monday.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there's never been a better time to get signed up, and we're here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping right away with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through the link in the description down below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use the link and support the boys. So one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. This podcast is also sponsored by the absolute best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know if you're getting a good or a bad deal. If the tickets are green, for example, you better act quick and secure those things because that's a good deal, but if the tickets are red, maybe wait a bit before pulling the trigger and monitor the price in the app. SeatGeek just makes it way too easy. Anyway, here's the best part though. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code Boys in the Booth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code Boys in the Booth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Continuing our conversation with former NHL goaltender and Boston Bruins analyst for NESN, Andrew Raycroft. Razor, you played with some absolute legends in the game, Sundin, Bergeron, Paul Coffey, Joe Sakic, the list goes on. Is there anyone who stands out to you as just being your favorite teammate, and anyone you were absolutely starstruck by during your career?
Oh, yeah. I mean, numerous guys. You just rattled off a few names that, of course, and a lot of it depended on, where I was throughout my career. Right? Paul Coffey, when I was 20 years old. I had Bergie, who was 18 at the time. We were roommates together for a few years, and seeing where he was at 18 to where he is now, or where he was will be in a couple years in the Hall of Fame. And then, so I guess a long way of saying everyone had their uniqueness in their stardom, but all of them had the one thing in common, that of being able, the leadership they had when they walked into the room, that starstruck type. It's not necessarily the starstruck that you would get, meeting a movie star, but it's the understanding that they have a way of looking at life, or a way of looking at the game that's different. And again, Brian Leetch, Ray Bourque, you just go on and on. The luck of the guys that I've been around, and again, the presence that a Matt Sundin has is different than other guys. You just know they're different players and different people.
Yeah, well said. And of course, you'll be reunited with Ray Bourque here in Brockville for the Winter Classic in a few weeks. I'm sure you're looking forward to that.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm fortunate enough to see Ray through the spring, summer, quite a bit here in Boston. He heads to Florida in the winter, so. But I talked to him, and we're looking forward to hanging out in Brockville. And Al Iafrate, I haven't seen Big Al in a long time, so it'll be great to see him. And then, of course, the other guys that connections with. So it's going to be an awesome weekend.
No, certainly. Just a few more here for you, Razor. Obviously, a guy that you're close with now is Tuukka Rask, and just seems like such a fun, loving personality of the game. Certainly miss him being in a Boston Bruins jersey. Of course, there's the famous trade that I'm sure you're sick of talking about all these years later. But how do you reflect on that and just describe your relationship with Tuukka?
Yeah, and of course, as time goes by, it gets funnier and funnier all the time. It's just hilarious how now we have our Unobstructed View show on Nest, and we're doing 6 times this year. We play golf quite a bit. We live literally 15 minutes from each other here in town, so it's just been funny how. Again, like I talked about with my broadcasting and just all the things that I never would have believed I'd be doing if you told me in 2009 that that's what it is. And in 17 years, you're going to be doing this, this, and this. You'll be going to Brockville to play. Like all these things that, again, life throws at you it's amazing, and it's been fun. And like you said, Tukes he's the best. He's just so much fun. We get along really well. We have all similar interests, and it's just amazing how the world and how life goes full circle at different times for us. That's
awesome. And speaking of goaltenders, your son Mason is a good goaltender in his own right. 15 years old, playing AAA hockey. What's it like working with him, and the fact that he's playing the same position as his old dad?
I love it. You really did your homework. I'm impressed.
Thanks,
Very
man.
Impressed, Harper. Mason Man's great. Mason is my oldest guy. I have boy-girl twins that are 11, but Mason is he wanted to be a goalie. I didn't let him be a goalie for a long time. He didn't play very much. He was into soccer, and we moved around so much. Hockey didn't necessarily gravitate to it right away, and certainly wasn't a kid that was playing club hockey at the age of 4. But it got to the point where he continued to show that he wanted to be a goalie, and it got to the point I thought I was being a good dad not letting him be a goalie, but it got to a point where I was being a horrible, unsupportive dad not letting him play goalie because that's all he wanted to do. It's been awesome. It's been absolutely awesome. He's getting really good. He's still waiting for his Mother Nature growth spurt, but pound for pound, he's as good as I've seen at 15, and he works so hard and loves it, and he's dedicated and has a great passion and great focus that's keeping him out of trouble, which is most important to us. So again, he's having fun with it, and for me, it's just been kind of cool to again give him a little bit of coaching, but more just to be able to kind of live those great minor hockey years again. That again goes back to all the things I just never expected my kid to be doing this, it's kind of a wild thing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Anyone in the NHL that you kind of show him and be like, you should look at this guy as kind of someone to model your game after?
Yeah, well, he shows me a lot of time. He's up to date on everybody, so he's always got the flips going. And did you see that? So, of course, Vasilevsky is one of his favorites. He loves the rush. He loves the guys who are athletic and do the splits. And cool. So the Vasilevskys, the Shesterkins, and then, of course, he's been lucky enough here in Boston to have been on the ice with Jeremy Swayman
Yeah.
and get to say hi to him, and that's a pretty good role model for him here too. So, but yeah, it's amazing with social media and YouTube. Like, it's so easy to see every highlight and every save and every goal, unlike it was when we had the 4 channels back in Belleville 25 years ago. So there's a lot of hockey consumed for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Just one more here for you, Razor. The Boston Bruins. And this season has certainly not gone the way the Bruins would have hoped so far. However, they are in a wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, but it just kind of seems like it's been one up, one down all year long so far for the Bruins through 50-plus games here. That was an ugly night in Buffalo the other night, obviously. What is just sort of your what are your thoughts on just the overall state of the Bruins right now and where you see this thing headed in Boston?
I mean, you nailed it with the 1 up, 2 down, 2 up, 2 down,
Yeah.
2 up, 3 down, 1 up. That's what it's been. It's been that the entire season. I think they're good still.
I think so too.
I still think they're good. Of course, the Buffalo game the other night, they've really struggled with consistency because of the back end injuries.
Yeah.
Carlo, McAvoy, and Lindholm out of the lineup against Buffalo the other night. It's just really hard to be consistent without your 3 top defensemen not in the lineup. They were able to hold their head above water for a fairly, with the new coaching change and without Hampus Lindholm in the lineup for a month, but then I think they kind of got caught with that 6-game losing streak, just struggling on the back end a little bit, and then McAvoy goes out. So I do believe these guys are coming back soon. I do believe when they have a full, healthy defense and they get Hampus Lindholm back, I think that takes care of some of the consistency issues, and I think they're going to be one of the beneficiaries of the break. I'm curious if the younger teams have a harder time out of the break, but I think a team like Boston should look better after the Four Nations break, and they should be able to get their guys back. And so I'm still bullish on them, but certainly it's been challenging at different times in the year to look past some of the blemishes and some of the results that they've had.
Yeah.
As a bullish, idea of their team.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. And before we let you go, Razor, want to plug your podcast that you do with Billy Jaffe. Tell us about it.
Sure thing. Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor. We kind of have a 20 to 30 minute talk show radio breakdown of the game. We'll do it 2 or 3 times a week. So essentially after every game, there's some games we miss, but break down the game. Again, down here in Boston, we don't get as much talk radio as we do in Toronto or in Brockville. So we break down the game the night before, break down the current events of the Bruins on a weekly basis, and just kind of go through the team with a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb than what you typically get. So it's been fun. Jaffe's great, and we have a lot of fun with it.
Razor, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work, man. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Happy to do it. And again, like we said, look forward to being up there in a couple weeks and hanging out.
All right. Thank you to the great Andrew Raycroft for joining us on the Boys in the Booth podcast. He is going to be in Brockville for the Winter Classic on Family Day weekend. Happy February, boys. And what did we think of that conversation with Razor?
Yeah, I thought that was awesome, man. Like, the fact that he was gracious enough to give you that much time, like, that was cool. It's a shame we're not going to be at the Winter Classic this year, or, well, I won't be, and I assume Casey won't be as well. We have in the past, but this year we're going to be at the Four Nations Face-Off. I believe it's that same weekend, so that'll be super fun for us anyway. I did want to bring up one thing, Harp, and you probably know what I'm going to say here. The night before you did the interview with Razor, we were talking about how we wanted to get this done. I prepared a few questions for the guy, and one of them you used, actually, and asked Andrew Raycroft that question. The question was something to the effect of, you have a son, Mason. He's playing AAA. He's a goaltender, et cetera, et cetera. And he really liked that question. And I just want to know why you took credit for it and didn't give me any credit. You didn't throw me a bone here.
I didn't.
I love it. You really did your homework. I'm impressed.
See, like, come on. Come on.
I didn't realize it when we were, when it was going on, but I did text you after.
Yes.
And so I knew you were going to bring this up, and yes, I felt guilty about it after because I listened to it back and I realized, geez, that was your question, and it was a good one. He really liked that, and we got a good response from it. So yes, good on you, thank you, and it felt bad for stealing your thunder there.
Hey, we're a team. That's what I said.
Yep.
You can use the question. That's why I prepared it. I knew you were going into it, but I'm just kind of teasing you. I do have to let you know, though, that going forward, this clip.
I love it. You really did your homework. I'm impressed.
I'm going to be using that going forward. Anytime you're prepared. Yeah, anytime you're prepared for something, you got a great question, I'm going to tell you, wow, you're really prepared for that. You did your homework. I'm impressed.
That's a good soundbite to keep for sure.
Yeah.
Right on. Case, what did you think?
Well, first of all, to Chad's point, I'm surprised you didn't already do that homework because you're the connections guy. And I know that you live on elite prospects, clicking through family connections and college connections and every single connection you can make. So I'm shocked you didn't do that. I thought it was interesting. Like he talks about some of the guys that he played with. His career was a very good career. And obviously winning the Calder as a goalie is a phenomenal thing. And that was a fantastic season. And he talked about some of the great players that he played with in his career. I looked up that Calder winning team, Calder Trophy, his Calder Trophy, not the AHL, of course.
Yeah.
And just like looking at some of the players on this team, like at the top, there's some fantastic names that maybe you're expecting, but again, just to remind you, Joe Thornton, Glenn Murray, Brian Rolston, Mike Newell, Sergei Samsonov, and Patrice Bergeron. But then I just kept going down the line, and like oddly relevant team today in that Travis Green was on that team. Michael Nylander was on that team.
Yep. Ted
Donato, Ryan Donato's father, was on that team. And then some of these guys like Gonchar, Hal Gill, Colton Orr, and then of course his backup that season was Felix Potvin. Like just kind of a wild team.
Dude, so crazy. When I was looking into it, because I did the same thing, right? I heard we were interviewing Razor, and I looked at all the players that he's played with. And I expected some big names, right? Because he played, I think, Harp, you said it was a 12-year career on a bunch of different teams. But I was blown away, like, Case, all the ones you mentioned, and then talking about, guys who played then on his team who are relevant today. He also played with Bill Guerin in Boston, which is something pretty crazy. Paul Coffey, like both of those guys are currently in the NHL. Billy Guerin, obviously Minnesota Wild, Paul Coffey in Edmonton. So that's pretty cool. And then just, looking in Toronto, of course, he was part of that Tuukka Rask for himself, that trade there, 1-for-1. And, all Leaf fans remember that one not so fondly. And it's just interesting that, they're buddies now and seemingly inseparable. But in Toronto, we played with guys like Matt Sundin, Darcy Tucker, Jeff O'Neill, who we know is the O-Dog on TSN, played with him. Thomas Caberlet, Brian McCabe, Nick Antropov, those guys. And then in Colorado, like Sakic, Foote, like et cetera, like the list goes on, like just absolute studs there. And then in Vancouver, he played parts of a season while Lou and Schneider were still there, which is pretty cool. The Sedins, obviously, Kevin Bieksa, like he was basically a part of that team, the Canucks, that is, right before they went on their run in 2011. So it was a lot of the same group that was there the prior season when he was there. So it's pretty cool. Like he's played with so many legends, and to have him on the podcast and to get his time for that long, like I just thought that was really great.
Yeah, and another thing that I picked up just picking up from the interview and then also like watching his sandbagger and things like that. He's just a guy that loves the game. And in the way that he talked about, he never thought he'd get into broadcasting after. And was kind of deciding what to do after hockey, but it just seemed inevitable that he was going to be involved with the game because he loves the game so much. And it's really, there's three options when a guy is so ingrained in hockey and loves hockey. It's broadcasting, it's podcasting, and it's getting involved in like alumni hockey games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's actually done all three now. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It reminds me of similar career, actually, now that I think of it, to a guy like Nick Kyprios, who played a while ago, now has a show on Sportsnet that, and this is why it's on the top of my mind because I listen to it all the time. It's one of my go-to shows, Real Kipper and Born. But he's also on like the Sportsnet panel when they do Leafs games sometimes, and he's obviously very involved in the Maple Leafs alumni games and whatnot. So, and it seems like Raycroft is doing all of those same things, and yeah, it's just really cool. I was so happy we were able to get him for such a long time, and of course, like it's even cooler for me because looking back on my childhood, this was a player that I actively cheered for, even though now that I look back, it's like, oh God, did we really have to give up Tuukka Rask like for this guy, So
Yeah.
But they laugh about that now, obviously. So
yeah, he's got a good outlook on it for sure. And again, like my main takeaway for me would have to be the fact that he won the Calder Trophy in that 03-04 season, and that never gets talked about with him. It's always like Andrew Raycroft, like when his name gets brought up, he was that he was involved in that trade 1-for-1 for Tuukka Rask, and then that's kind of it. Like the fact that he was the second last goaltender ever to date right now to win that award is really impressive. And I don't think it gets talked about enough when you bring up Andrew Raycroft. So no, he was great, and glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it was just Mason after him, right? Who was
Steve Mason? Yeah,
Steve Mason,
right.
yeah. And yeah, Case, just back to your point and to kind of wrap up before we get into the show here and Core 4 Stories. It's interesting, like listening to him talk about what he was going to do after hockey, and for him to just say like, yeah, like I tried out being in the real world and it just wasn't for me, and all I know is hockey. And it's like, it's just so funny. It's like, what a life, like playing the NHL. You try to be a normal person after the fact, but you've still just got that passion, that grind, that love of the game. You just can't get away from it. So that's just awesome to hear.
Oh, especially if you still live in the city that you're known like for playing in. I feel like it's impossible to become like a salesman or something like that. And it's just like, well, aren't you Andrew Raycroft? Like,
yeah,
it's impossible
100%
to get away from it. So you might as well just fully embrace it.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. All right, there we go. Thanks again to Andrew Raycroft for coming on this episode of Boys in the Booth. And now we'll get into Core 4 Stories to wrap up the show, and we've got some good items for that. So, Chad, let's cue it up.
Core 4.
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 Here we go, Core 4 Stories. Again, our new intro there. Hope you like it for the segment. And so Core 4 Stories will wrap up episode 229 due to the fact that we got Andrew Raycroft on the show for an extensive period of time. So, guys, let's get into it here. And shocker, it's going to be all 4 trades that we saw over the weekend here for the 4 items for Core 4 Stories. So we'll go in order here, and let's start with the trade between Calgary and the Philadelphia Flyers. So the Flames picking up Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost, a couple of forwards in their mid-20s, looking for a fresh start. I think they were wanting to get out of their situations in Philly for some time. And in exchange, the Flyers receiving Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Peltier, who was starting to become a bit of a fan favorite in Calgary, of course, a 2nd and a 7th going to the Flyers as well. So thoughts on this deal for item number 1 and one of the 4 trades that we're going to be talking about here for Core 4 Stories?
This one caught me completely off guard. Just not on my radar that this would happen at all. And I think that the Calgary Flames have done some good business. absolutely fleecing the Philadelphia Flyers here. Morgan Frost has been super productive on a very middling team in Philly the last couple of years. Joel Farabee is kind of just on the cusp of breaking into being like a real top six player. He plays a great 200-foot game and can contribute. Two young guys at that kind of fit the mold of a retooling or cusp rebuilding Calgary Flames team. And really what they gave up was Kuzmenko, who just did not work out in Calgary. We've foreseen this happening at the beginning of the season, saying that he wasn't going to work within their system, wasn't going to be productive. And Pelliche, who's been in the system a long time, up and down and kind of never really sticking the landing. So I think those are two easy guys for Calgary to kind of move away from, and then only giving up a second and a seventh. Like this is really good business for Calgary.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if you're getting a guy like Joel Farabee in this deal, I think, that is just such a huge piece for this team who is seemingly going for it. There's no indication that they're going to just roll over and sell pieces at the deadline. It sounds like they want to get Anderson done. Sounds like they're not going to be trading guys like Kadri or whoever else. So it's kind of the perfect solution for them. It's kind of like a soft buy, it's like a conservative buy at the deadline here, or I guess before the deadline. And getting a guy like Farabee, to me, just screams perfect fit for this team. A younger guy who can just be injected into your lineup. You don't have to put training wheels on him or anything. Like you're not building from the ground up. You can just insert him and he'll produce. And I think that's exactly what they need in Calgary. Over the past 5 seasons, just looked it up quick, Joel Farabee is second in scoring on the Philadelphia Flyers. I remember he led the team in scoring one year, a couple of years ago. So I think he's a perfect player for this team.
And I want to clarify something that I said. I said he's on the cusp of being a top 6 forward. He's obviously been a top 6 forward in Philly, but I mean a top 6 forward on every single team in the league.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then when you look at Philly's side here, and like I know a lot of people are saying that Calgary wins the trade because they get the better players, but if you look at Kuzmenko going to Philadelphia, I think that is also a perfect fit just to help out a guy like Matvei Michkov, because we've heard that Michkov has had some communication issues with Torts, which shouldn't surprise anyone, even if there wasn't a language barrier there. But there very much is a language barrier, and getting a guy like Kuzmenko, who is his former teammate from the KHL, to play together, to just kind of, take him under his wing and when Torts says something that Kuzmenko understands, but Michkov doesn't, he can just say like, hey, like, forget it. Like, you don't have to listen to this guy. We can just play hockey here.
I completely agree with you on this one, but you're quickly becoming the mentor guy. Harp's the
oh my God,
becoming the mentor guy.
Yeah. That might be my new title. That might be my new title. Oh my God, guys, last show we had some spicy clips, and the Taylor Hall one was one good one, and we had some back and forth comments about that one. So, but yeah, that's funny that I'm on this side of it again. But yeah, Kuzmenko, I think he's a good fit. I really do. And, if it works out for him in terms of production, like that could be a sneaky good ad for Philadelphia, who's not expected to be good this year. Maybe next year they'll be more competitive as Michkov gets better. But I think it's just good to have another player who can help a young guy fit in. I think it makes so much sense.
I agree. But can you explain Philly? Like, I understand what Philly brought in to their team here, but
yeah,
why get rid of Farabee and Frost?
That I don't understand at all. And when I saw this trade, I thought about it from a Maple Leafs perspective. And in this trade, the Leafs would be the Flames acquiring 2 good young players. And it's like, you could do that. Like, you can shake up your roster and just go poach from a team who doesn't know how to conduct business and, give them something they value that might not be valued as much around the league. And it's like, you can do that. And that is the perfect trade for Calgary. I think they win it like it's a slam dunk. So I'm with you, Case. I don't really know what Philly's doing, but I do see the return. And I'm like, well, Kuzmenko is just a year removed from a pretty damn good season. I think didn't he score 39 2 seasons ago now? So it's like,
correct. Yeah.
He could be, he was also on waivers since then, but I think his upside is high. But yeah, I don't exactly know what Philly's doing in terms of value here.
He might just need a different fit, like a change of scenery here. Like you said, like that's a insane season in Vancouver, but
Yeah.
it's just not worked out in Calgary, and we knew that was the case. But
Yeah. Well, he tore it up the first like 2 weeks he was in Calgary. Do you remember that? He had like
I do remember that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a lot has changed since then. I'm interested to see what Torts can do with Kuzmenko. I don't. It's not what comes to my mind as like a Torts player, but maybe.
But I think the big piece is Peltier, right? Like that's the idea. You get younger here. I know Frost and Farabee are youngish players, but maybe they're playing the long game in Philadelphia. You get a bit younger. Maybe that's the angle.
I was a little surprised, to be honest, that Peltier goes the other way in this deal. I just thought like he's really starting to become a big part of that young core that they have there. Clearly, it was hard for Calgary to see him go. I mean, just he's kissing everybody in Calgary, players, media, and all of that, and was playing really well. But at the same time, they can kind of afford to lose a guy like that. You're not giving up a Zari or a Coronado or some of these young core pieces that are ahead of a guy like Peltier. So as Craig Conroy put it, you have to give up something to get something. And he gets two really good players here in a deal that is really good for the Calgary Flames, a deal that they should be making because it's a deal for right now and into the future with their age and skill set and everything. Farabee's a 2-time 20-goal scorer. I believe he had 50 points last year. And Morgan Frost is a talented guy, former first-round pick as well for Philly. And I think there was a lot of interest in him being the fact that he is a center. I just think it was time for those guys. I think they wanted to move on, and the messaging from John Tortorella in Philadelphia and just everything there was getting a bit old for them. And so Calgary, I think, gets two really good, still youngish, motivated players here, and I don't mind some of the pieces here for Philly. If Kuzmenko can fit in and get that chemistry going with Michkov again, and if Peltier can find a bigger role and they use that second round pick wisely, this could look like a pretty even trade, I think, down the road for both of these clubs.
Yeah. What I'll say on this trade as well, sorry, I wanted to get one thing out, is it's interesting that we're seeing more and more teams who are in the middle, instead of tearing it right down to the studs like we've seen in years past. It seems like more and more teams are kind of retooling on the fly, for better or for worse. I don't think we've seen, what can happen when you do it properly, because teams really haven't done that over the past decade. But now we're seeing teams like Calgary, I think, is trying to do that. St. Louis is a team who's trying to do that. So it's kind of interesting. Like, we've seen disasters, right? When you strip it down to the bare bones and then your team stinks forever. Buffalo, I hate that they're the first team I think of, but it's true. So it's interesting to see teams going a different direction. We'll see if it works out.
Yeah, just Minnesota and Nashville scare me when you talk like that, because I mean, Minnesota's great now, but the last decade has been a very middle team for the longest time. And it's because they were always doing this retooling effort. But what I was going to say about this trade, just to wrap up on it, is like, came at some bad timing for like Calgary, Philadelphia, like, I don't know, their media coverage, because there's like so much going on in this world of hockey in this trade from Rantanen and Miller. And then it was like, like the Tinker tape running at the bottom of the screen is Philadelphia and Calgary made a trade. And you're like, yeah. So anyways, I think the JT Miller trade it's just
so true.
Such bad timing. But yeah, I mean, maybe they want to fly under the radar, and maybe they just, want to see how these trades work out for each other.
Peltier actually had to get pulled off the ice after the first period, and was told that he was traded. So he played the first period of a game for Calgary and then was informed that he had been traded to Philly. So that's pretty crazy. And then apparently Frost and Farabee got picked up in Philly on a private jet by Craig Conroy to come to Calgary and play on the weekend against Detroit on Hockey Night in Canada. So pretty nice first impression there for the two new guys in Calgary.
I watched that game, by the way, Detroit and Calgary. In their own right, both really nice jerseys. Against each other on the ice, chaos in my brain. Too much red, ugly, hate it. So just wanted to put that out there. Not good.
Jeez. And yeah, and again, like before we get on to item number 2 here, I think we're seeing a lot more teams retool on the fly, and we've seen some success stories, right? Look at the Dallas Stars, look at the Washington Capitals and what they've been able to do this year. And yes, you brought up
Washington. That's a good one. Yeah.
You brought up the Buffalo factor, and I think that scares the hell out of a lot of teams, and I think that's why we're not seeing the tear down rebuilds like we used to. Now, I think you could put San Jose into that category, like tearing it
Chicago
down.
too.
And Chicago, and yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's a good point for sure. All right, fellas, let's move on to item number 2 here. And we mentioned him a minute ago. JT Miller, he is out of Vancouver and joins the New York Rangers, the team he was drafted by. So it's a reunion between the Blue Shirts and Miller. Eric Brandstrom and Jackson Dorrington, a prospect, go to the Rangers as well from Vancouver in exchange for center Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, a right shot defenseman in his mid-20s, has looked good in the 15 games that he's played with the Rangers this season, and a 2025 first-round draft pick going to Vancouver that was then flipped to another team in another deal, which we will get to in item number 3. But let's get into this one. Arguably the biggest deal of the weekend. It probably was the biggest one. JT Miller out of Vancouver. The saga is over, and he goes to the Rangers. Nice debut for Miller too with the Blue Shirts.
Yeah, 2 goals. He has 2 assists today. That's 4 points in 2 games. They lost 6-3 yesterday. I'm so glad this is over. I just don't want to hear about this anymore. Like, as much as I've talked about in the past that I hate listening to, like, the Chychrun saga of, like, where's this guy going to get traded? There's nothing more that I hate listening to than locker room drama. Like, I don't care. Let's get him out or put it to bed. Like, I just was so tired of that. So I'm happy to hear that this is over, at least for Miller and Vancouver. We'll see if they want to trade Pettersson still. There's talks about that, but I don't know why they would. But man, why'd it have to be the Rangers? Like, that's so disappointing. But it is what it is, and the East continues to stockpile, and especially the Metro. So we'll see what happens. It was very obvious today that the Devils need to go out and get a center who can compete, play in the middle 6, and win faceoffs, because they lost to Buffalo today. Gag me. The trade, not enough.
Agreed.
It's not enough. And like, this was what we were waiting for. Thank Carolina and Colorado for giving us a trade that we can be excited about and talk about and like excite us for the trade deadline coming up, because this one wouldn't be it. If we didn't get the Carolina Colorado trade, we'd just be sitting here disappointed in general right now.
Yeah, I agree. The trade in terms of value, like, not enough at all. And the argument is, well, they were dealing from a position of weakness because Miller wanted out and there was locker room drama and everyone knew it. It was the worst kept secret in the league until about, 2 months ago. And then everyone knew, like, and they weren't trying to hide it. And then their general manager came out in a press conference and said, yeah, I don't know if there's any way forward for these two guys to coexist. And it's like, what are we doing? You can't come out and say that, tank the value of both of your assets, and then still proceed to trade them. Like, it makes no sense to me that they pulled the trigger on this deal, because for JT Miller, who is a consistent 100-point player, I know he's only done it once, but he had 99 the 1 year. He's a 100-point player. Okay. He had 103 last season. He scores goals. He does everything you need from him. He's incredible on the power play. He wins faceoffs. Like, he does anything you ask of him. He plays with a bite. He's a perfect player, and he's a perfect fantasy player, which is why I'm a bit biased towards him. But in return for him, you get a third line center in Philip Hedl, who I know is young and maybe has room to grow, but that's what you get. You get a first round pick, which, okay, whatever, that's magic beans. If New York misses the playoffs, I guess it could be relatively high. This year it's top 13 protected, so it could be as high as 14, I guess. And then Victor Mancini, which, forgive me, I don't have much of a read on him. I hear he's a pretty good defensive prospect, so whatever. But still, sort of magic beans. Not enough in return for Vancouver. Not enough at all. And it's eerily similar to the trade that they made for to get rid of Bo Horvat a couple of years ago. And the similarities go on as well. So in return for Bo Horvat, they got a first-round pick, Anthony Beauvillier, who is, like a middle six player, I would say, so similar to a Philip Hedl in this deal, and Atu Ratu, who is in this comparison similar to Victor Mancini, a young prospect. So you get almost the exact same return for Miller as you did for Bo Horvat, and I think we can kind of agree that it wasn't enough for Horvat, and it's probably not enough for Miller, who is a better player right now. I don't know if everyone would agree with that take, but that's how I feel. And then the similarities go on as well. With that first round pick that they received for Horvat, they flipped it, if you'll remember, to get Philip Hronek, right? They did the same thing here and got less because they got Marcus Pettersson, who is a worse defenseman than Philip Hronek. I'm sorry, it's not close. So it's just, in these two deals that they made, they followed the exact same formula as they did for the Horvat situation and got worse both times for a better asset. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I just think, like, it's not terrible for Vancouver in terms of value. Like, they didn't get a ransom for the guy, but they didn't get nothing either considering his value. But it's just like, I don't know, man. If the guy's value is at an all-time low and you're trading from a position of weakness, maybe just don't trade. Maybe just hold on to the asset. And I mean, I know, like, figuring things out in the room wasn't an option because they've tried that for the past 2 years. But maybe, like, if you're the GM of this team, you just say, listen, suck it up. Like, some people don't like their coworkers. You still have to work together, and that's the only way you're going to be able to win a cup, because without JT Miller, even after flipping the first round pick that they received to get Marcus Pettersson, they're worse off today than they were a week ago. And that's not good for a team who wants to win.
A player with 2 100-point seasons, I'm counting the 99 one because he missed a couple of games. 2 100-point seasons, getting a top 4 defenseman, a middle 6 defenseman, and a defensive prospect who Rangers fans are talking up like crazy after this trade. I just don't think it's enough. And I'm going to die on that hill. I understand that it's a position of weakness, but, like, you got to overcome that. You got to do better. But now I'm a little, I don't know if we're going to get into the, like, I know Harp wants to weigh in here, or if we're going to get into the Marcus Pettersson trade separate. I've got more positive things to say about that trade than the JT Miller one.
Yeah, we'll get into the Pettersson trade separately. So any last thoughts on the Miller deal? I mean, I really don't have anything else to add. I think, Chad, you made some good points there. That's a good call. It's very similar to the Horvat deal, and I just think back to when Horvat was traded, and who would have thought that a couple of years later here, Miller would be out, and we'd have all this drama and turmoil after last season for the Canucks. And after we thought that, okay, this team has finally figured it out, they're close. Coming into this 24-25 season, they could be a Stanley Cup contender. The year before, they took the Edmonton Oilers to Game 7 of the second round, and they said that. They thought they had it figured out, and it's just that it's a damn shame, but it seems to be in the Canucks DNA that with this core that it has clearly just been wasted time and again. They have one or two good years, and then that's kind of it. And then it's a shit show, and and then they have to move on from somebody. It would be nice now if they still had Bo Horvat, or they could have one of these guys in the mix. So I don't know. And then with Hedl, like, there's real risk there. Like, great player, but there's like with his concussion history and everything, I really don't know. And it was also interesting to hear Patrick Alvin say that he had a conversation with Miller 2 months ago. And 2 months ago, they came to the conclusion that it would be the best thing for Miller and the Canucks if he moved on. So here we are today. And if there's nothing else you guys want to add, we can get into the second deal that they made.
I think we do have to just quickly mention that, like, this return is probably enough if he's a rental. Like, I would say.
Yep.
But
exactly.
He's in year 2 of 7 on a $8 million deal as a 100-point player. That just spikes the value so much more. So I think that's crazy. But I just want to touch on something I mentioned earlier, is that I don't know if you guys have lived in the comment sections on these trades like I have. I get a little bit of guilty pleasure just reading about just some terrible opinions. But something I have seen while I've been looking for that is the Rangers fans are just like, I thought that they'd be dancing in the street for this one, but they're really just talking up Hedl and Mancini over and over again, saying like, oh, I'm so sad to see Hedl go. Like, he had so much potential. I want to see what happened, with his career here in New York. And like, oh, Mancini's this like stud coming up on the back end. It caught me off guard reading all these comments. So I found it interesting. I don't know if, maybe they don't want to seem like thieves or something like that. So they're like talking up their end of the trade.
Guilty.
Yeah.
I think it's like fans just get attached to their own guys, right? So like they're like, oh, Hedl was part of the kid line. He had that one great playoff. And, Mancini, like everyone gets excited about prospects, right? Because they could be anything, like they could be a number 1 defenseman on a good team, but you just never know. Like, you're never, until they actually do it, you don't have that disappointment, right, of them not being able to do it. So you're just so excited about prospects. And that's why it's the best to be like a rebuilding team in certain respects, because you have so many of these guys who could just be anything, like, and so you're just like, there's a lot of hope there. And there are 2 things that sell. I don't remember exactly who says this. It might be Friedman. Harp, you could probably remind me if it is him. There are 2 things that sell. One is hope. The other's wins. You better have one
Correct.
of them.
Exactly.
So yeah, hope sells like crazy. And I think that's a part of it for Rangers fans.
No, for sure.
If hope is worth more, if these prospects and picks are worth more, then the Nashville Predators got more for Tanner Jeannot than Vancouver did for JT Miller. Like, JT Miller's Tanner Jeannot times 2, and they got a Cal Foot, a first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth.
Yeah. By the way, like, we talked about that trade at the time, like, insane. I know draft picks, like, you can go back and forth, right? Like, how valuable you actually think draft picks are. It depends on your scouting staff. It depends on, where the team finishes in the standings. But that was a crazy, crazy trade at the time. And Jeannot has been meh at best. But yeah, for this, like, Harp, you mentioned it, talking about the core of this team being wasted, the Canucks, that is. Nobody's talking about Quinn Hughes this year, and they should be, because he is the best defenseman in the NHL this season. Full stop. Like, there's no one better.
Cale Makar.
This season, right now, I don't know, man. Quinn Hughes has taken his game to another level. And sure, yeah, Cale Makar is the best in the world, maybe, but that's a pretty good second to be if he's number one.
I would give, to your point though, I would give Hughes some Hart Trophy love, like especially that game last weekend against Washington. Like if it weren't for him, they have no chance, and the abuse he's been taking on a nightly basis too, and they would be nothing without him. And they better find a way to hang on to Pettersson now, because if they let
Contract's
him go,
up.
yeah. Yeah.
But
So-
that's what I'm saying. He's so good and he's getting no
He is.
attention because this has sucked all of the oxygen out of the room in every room that you're in, whether you're in Vancouver or Minnesota or New York. Like it's brutal. When you should get more love.
The Rangers have collected the Millers, the Canucks have collected the Petterssons, and it was like, New Jersey, your turn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good.
Oh.
Come on, Quinn, come home.
Yeah, exactly. All right, should we move on to the second trade that Vancouver made over the weekend?
Yes.
Okay. So, as we mentioned, Vancouver did receive a 2025 first rounder along with Hedel and Mancini in the Miller trade. And quickly after that deal with the Rangers, they flip that 2025 first rounder to Pittsburgh, along with Vinny Desharnais, a big right shot defenseman who just had an awful time in Vancouver this season, Danton Heinen, and prospect Melvin Fernstrom in exchange for Drew O'Connor, bottom six forward, and Marcus Pettersson, a top four defenseman. So thoughts on this deal, guys? And Chad, as you pointed out, Vancouver does the same thing here. They take that first rounder that they got in a previous deal, they flip it for a top four defenseman, just like they did with getting Philip Hronek. So thoughts on this one?
I think in terms of what they gave up, like Vinny Desharnais, that's just a big body on the back end. Fine, add that in. Danton Heinen has kind of been up and down and bottom, the bottom six on several teams. Melvin Fernstrom, you can probably watch him in the World Juniors next year. I would predict that. He's 18 years old, putting up decent points in the SHL. He was great for them in the U18s, so I expect to see him on Sweden next year. First round pick. Now, I started looking back and I'm like trying to find a way to show how much value there is in a top four defenseman, trading for a top four defenseman. Every year at the trade deadline, we see bottom pairing defensemen go for a lot. Sometimes first round picks get thrown around for these fifth, sixth defensemen. Exactly. So I did find a trade that I'm going to compare this a little bit to, and trying to find a guy like Marcus Pettersson wasn't the easiest thing. Like he has some good production. I think he had 30 points last year, but it's really the defensive end that he is like a calming presence back there. He's not the most physical guy in the world, but he's very good positionally. He retrieves pucks really well. He can move the puck like good enough to pair with a guy like Quinn Hughes. He's that perfect defensive defenseman to pair with a guy like Quinn Hughes, in that he's a defensive defenseman, but he's not completely useless with the puck by any means. So I did find a guy that I think compares, and that's Dmitry Orlov when he got traded from the Washington Capitals. And the return, I think Vancouver did better. Like looking back at this trade, Orlov got traded for Craig Smith, a first round pick, a third, a second, and a fifth. Now, Craig Smith is kind of the, I guess Danton Heinen in this.
Yeah.
In this
sure.
deal, I don't know.
Heinen's obviously the better player, but yeah.
Yeah, but scratch that off kind of, and then Fernstrom was a third round pick, and Desharnais is a throw in. So comparing this deal to that deal, and then adding Drew O'Connor the other side, who is a bottom six player who can contribute, has contributed, outpacing a fourth liner for sure. So he's probably a third line guy. He's also a dog on the forecheck, not necessarily like throwing his body, but he just is like magnetized to the puck. Whenever I watch Pittsburgh, he stands out for some reason. So I kind of like this deal. If this deal was in a vacuum, I like this deal for Vancouver. But now when you look at it as Miller, Desharnais, Heinen, Fernstrom, Brandstrom, Dorrington for Pettersson, Hedel, Mancini, and Drew O'Connor, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot to give up when you put it that way. But I'm kind of with you, Case. Like in a vacuum, I don't mind this deal. I think Pettersson is a capable defenseman. I don't know exactly where he slots in. Even if he does play with a Quinn Hughes, he's probably still like a number 4, would we say? Like he's probably a 4, maybe a 3 if you need him in a pinch. But on a good team in the playoffs, he's probably a 4. And I think giving up a first round pick, a pick that could be relatively high this year, it is a weak draft, so that's something to consider too. I don't know, like I'm kind of torn here, but I'm looking at it from Pittsburgh's perspective, and it's like a guy like Pettersson. Do you really need him on your team that is rebuilding or retooling on the fly? No, probably not. So and they want to do a fire sale here. So if they start collecting first round picks, this being the first of them, then I think they're on a good path. So I actually did really like this from Pittsburgh's too. So it's interesting that you liked it from Vancouver's perspective as well. Looking at the trade in a vacuum, I think it is pretty fair, but when you consider all of the pieces, I just think Vancouver got fleeced.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
I'm talking about the two trades together, though. I need to clarify that. Yeah.
No, definitely. But this Vancouver Pittsburgh deal, I kind of like it for both sides. I think that the Penguins, the big things for them, they get a prospect and they get a first round pick, and then Vancouver does shore up their back end a bit here, and they get a good bottom 6 forward who can contribute. So I don't mind this deal from both sides of the ledger, and it makes a lot of sense. Like Pettersson, I think I kind of thought he would end up on the Canucks all along. Rutherford and Alvin know him and O'Connor very well from their time in Pittsburgh. So this is not a surprise at all, and we'll see how they fit in with Vancouver. I do think Pettersson is going to help them on the back end, and I'm sure if Miller was still there, he'd be going crazy with all the different Petterssons in Vancouver. So no, but yes, combining the two deals, it is a lot to give up for what they got back for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to our fourth and final item here. Again, it's the trade edition of Core 4 Stories here on episode 229. We'll finish it off with a trade that happened on February 1st, the beginning of the month on Saturday. So this one, I'm not going to lie, boys, kind of caught me by surprise. Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci, a couple of rentals going from San Jose to the Dallas Stars in exchange for a first-round pick in 2025 and a third-round pick in 25 as well. The reason why I'm surprised about this deal is the Mikael Granlund side of it. I really thought because of how great he's been in San Jose, like he's really turned his career around there, and he's been so good on a line with Eklund and Zetterlund, two of their young core pieces there in San Jose. I thought that he was going to re-sign. Now, there's a caveat to that because let's say Dallas can't work out a deal with Granlund. San Jose could make this deal and then re-sign Granlund in free agency in the summer. However, that is in a little bit of jeopardy, I think, because we did see that Dallas wants to talk extensions right away with Granlund and Ceci. But yeah, this deal kind of got me by surprise. I think it's good for Dallas. They get a right shot defenseman in Ceci, who has really improved over the last few years and has experience of playing in a Stanley Cup final. And then San Jose, I think, gets really good value here for these two guys. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about moving Eklund or Granlund and saying that he's doing so well in San Jose. Why would you want to move him? But my side of it and a business side of it is he's doing so well in San Jose. Let's trade him because he's having like, back-to-back career years. He's always been like a good NHL player for sure, but these last 2 seasons have been phenomenal for him. And the value has never been higher on Mikael Granlund, and getting a first round pick and a third round pick for him and CC is absolute money for San Jose that's in a rebuild and has a very young team and is going to continue to add young players and prospects. And then on the same side of it, like Dallas, I think they're totally fine giving up a first and a third round pick to try to win the Stanley Cup this year, bringing in a very solid piece for their middle six and a defenseman to shore up the back end because they've had a lot of injuries. Obviously, Heiskanen's going to be out for a bit now. So, they needed to shore up the back end. They've plugged some holes very well, and I don't think that they're going to miss a first and a third if they win the Stanley Cup. Becomes a fourth if they don't make the conference finals, I'm pretty sure. So, good trade for both sides.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. I love the trade from both sides. Honestly, like if I could give an A+ for both teams, I would, because case, like you mentioned, the value has never been higher for a guy like Granlund or even a guy like CC. Like a couple of years ago, if we talked about Cody CC fetching a third or Granlund fetching a first, like you'd be laughed out of the building because nobody.
Exactly my thought process I had.
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago when Granlund was, putting up 41 points. If you told San Jose when they signed him, like, he's going to get you a first round pick someday, they would be overjoyed.
Nobody thought Mikael Granlund would be a point per game player in San Jose of all places. Yeah. Like that was never on the table. And now that he's having back-to-back career years, pull the trigger, recoup the value that as much value as you can get, and laugh all the way to the bank if you're Mike Grier. And then for Dallas, Case, you also mentioned it, the injuries are starting to pile up. Heiskanen goes down the other night. Tyler Seguin on LTIR. Seguin not expected to be back until around April. So that is obviously a huge loss for them, not having that veteran presence, and still a pretty good player on the ice too. So adding Granlund there down the middle is just perfect for them. It adds another layer of scoring for this team who gets it done by committee. I would expect Granlund's production probably drops off a little bit as he's not going to be the go-to guy anymore on this team, as opposed to in San Jose where he's, a first-line player and a pretty good one at that. But I would expect on a better team like Dallas, his production goes down a little bit. So if you hold him in fantasy, maybe sell high as well, like the Sharks did. That would be my advice. But I do love the trade from both teams' perspectives here. Like, get value for San Jose, and for Dallas, you get guys to fill in your lineup.
It's not just for the playoff run too. Like you got to get there and have yourself in a good position. The Central is a bit of a bloodbath, so they want to have home ice advantage, and the best way that they can ensure that is to bring in guys to plug the holes for Tyler Seguin and Heiskanen. So that makes total sense. And then if you get those guys back, you're deep.
Yeah. And actually, I just forgot something. I got to go totally back on what I just said. I'm mentor guy now. So San Jose should have kept Granlund. They should have never traded him, no matter what value you're getting back.
Young Swedes and I tried to. Well, he's Finnish. What am I?
Chad, I tried to bait you there. You didn't. You didn't take it.
When the return is this good, you can't. Yeah. But if the return's a third round pick for Taylor Hall, then don't pull the trigger.
Well, and again, like on the Dallas side of it, we know that they wanted to re-sign Max Domi. They weren't able to. He goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
We know
that they want to re-sign Mikael Granlund. They might not be able to, so San Jose may be able to bring him back for free in the summer. I could certainly see that if he is in fact available. And then on the San Jose side of it, again, just great asset management by Mike Grier at the end of the day. And this goes back into the summer, guys. He got a third-round pick for taking on Cody CC and had to give up Ty Emberson to the Edmonton Oilers. So he actually gets 2 third-rounders here for Cody CC. and to your guys' point, who would have thought that a couple of years ago? right? Like, who would have thought that 3 or 4 years ago, even, down the road? So, or behind us rather. So again, this is great work by Mike Greer, and then to get another first rounder for Mikael Granlund while his value is high. And I mean, the last time the Sharks had 2 first rounders in one draft, you don't have to go far. It was last year, and they got Macklin Celebrini, their franchise forward, and Sam Dickinson in a future top pair defenseman. So let's see what Mike Greer can do this time around with a couple of first rounders in 2025 as well. And because he could be ending up with Matthew Schaefer and something else here. So this is great work again done by Mike Greer in San Jose.
Do you see how fired up Harp is right now for the hope? The hope in San Jose, like all these picks and prospects, like I'm telling you, hope sells, man. He's fired up.
So it's settled now. I'm the connection / hope guy. Is that me now? I guess
you got to have a lot of hope to still believe in the Buffalo Sabres, man. I'll say that.
Yeah, trying to find little things at this point. Yuri Kulik has arrived, guys. It's great.
Oh my God.
So anyway, that's awesome. Well, any more thoughts on this deal?
Not on this deal, but I've called Tom Fitzgerald 17 times and his phone, I can't get through. So I don't know. Hopefully that means he's talking to other GMs right now. But
he better be, man. With the Metro loading up, like, as soon as the Rantanen deal got done, you said in the chat, why did it have to be Carolina? Why the Metro? And then we see the Rangers get JT Miller, a guy who's rumored to go to New Jersey as well. And it's like, why? So that's tough. They're going to make a move.
Case, to your point, like at this point now with the moves that we've seen in the Metro, does Fitzgerald be like, all right, fine, let's see what the market is for Simon Nemec and see what I can add to this team in the here and now for a young player like that who clearly has some frustrations about not playing in the NHL?
I think that he was pretty clear about guys he didn't want to trade last year, especially around like the Markstrom deal. And I don't think that he's really willing to budge on players. And I guess he did in the end for Holtz, but fine with the return there.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, that looks great. But I think it's going to be Seamus Casey before it's going to be Shimon Nemec. Casey's kind of like semi the odd man out in the end. Like the right side is jammed.
Good player though.
Yeah,
I know, but you have to give up good players to get good players.
Yes,
I heard that the other day. And when you look at Nemec and Casey, 2 right-hand defensemen, I would urge them to keep Nemec. I'm a big fan of Seamus Casey, but he is undersized. He's going to be that offensive first defenseman. And they already have Luke Hughes. They have Dougie Hamilton. And Nemec can be an offensive guy in the future here. So I think the odd man out would be Seamus Casey. But at this point, as long as the return's good, trade either one of them.
Yeah. They have Anton Silyev waiting in the wings as well.
Yeah,
that's
but he's
right,
just like
too.
a totally different player than those 2 guys.
Yeah,
to me, he's untouchable.
Yeah, 6'7" defenseman. Like,
they
no way.
Traded
High
Kevin
pick.
Ball, and they got a more talented big baller on the back.
I would have said Nemec was untouchable at the beginning of this year, but now they spent some time in the AHL complaining about that, and I don't know.
He's rubbed you the wrong way.
He has a bit, but I really want him to be successful in New Jersey, like, end of the day.
Yeah, well, I think New Jersey will do something. And hey, maybe, Case, you'll get your wish and they acquire Jake Evans. With the way Montreal is going now, maybe they decide to sell off a little bit at the deadline. Who knows?
Okay, Think bigger. Think bigger. Like, if you're going to Montreal, you want like Suzuki and Caulfield. That's the only way you're going to compete with Rantanen and JT Miller. Like, what do you? You can't get Jake Evans here. You got
Yanni Gourde in Seattle. Brock Nelson.
Well, he's hurt now, so I bet his value is just all the way down.
I would have
Also,
thought that Yanni
yeah.
Gord was going to be the guy, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I know I just mentioned Brock Nelson, but I don't know. I doubt we'd see a Devils Islanders deal.
No. Plus, Islanders are hot, man. They don't know when to
are.
pack in their season. They've won like 8 of their last 10 or something, and they're
Yeah.
cooking. They're buzzing right now. I think they've won 6 in a row. Is that still their
7.
streak?
They've won
7
7
now.
straight. A couple of nice ads too, like some low key ads. Scott Perunovich is playing really well for them. Tony DeAngelo too. Regardless of how you feel about him and his political views, he's come back and he's playing pretty well for the Islanders.
Yeah, but there's 18 teams between them and a playoff spot right now. Like, I mean, actually, now that I look at it, like, there's only 2. There's Detroit and Boston, but then Montreal's right there. The Rangers, even the Penguins. Like, I don't know. It's funny. Like, look, if you look at every single team who's out of a playoff spot right now in the East, they all have minus goal differentials, and every single team who's in the playoffs right now has a positive goal differential. It's interesting.
That's the way it usually works.
Yeah.
First of all, Harp, I think you forget who is in the New York Islanders GM position right now.
Oh no, I remembered.
He loves to trade with the New Jersey Devils, so I think it's possible that they trade with the Islanders. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but if they're trading with the Islanders, it better be Matt Barzal. When are we going to start hearing his name? That's my question.
Probably never, because they're just going to compete every year and miss the playoffs by 2 to 6 points, and everyone will just be content.
How is he not hitting his life? Everyone talks about people wanting to leave team. I don't know. That's a rabbit hole that we don't have time for.
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a short one, boys. This turned into a bit of a long one.
This is always how it goes. But hey,
big trades.
It's we had 4 exciting trades to talk about for Core 4 stories, and again, great interview with Andrew Raycroft. Thank you to Razor for coming on the show, and condolences to the family and friends of Shawn Simpson, who passed away earlier this week. He was a guest on this podcast in 2023, and we'll always remember that and appreciate that. So thank you for listening to episode 229. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll chat with you again next week. All the best.